Welcome everyone to episode 9 of the Mise-En-Sesh podcast. I'm Elliot, he's George, and this week is going to be a little bit different, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But first we're going to talk about some stuff, some film and media related stuff. George, what stuff are we going to talk about?
So the stuff we're talking about today, I've got a couple of little topics, these are all based around short form media. So the first, the most apparent one at the minute is TikTok. And I don't know if you use the app. I use it a little bit, and I've somehow amassed a small following. Very, very loyal fans, obviously. But what amazes me is the creativity of some people, because the longest you can record is 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And some people create these short films which are so incredibly creative, well done. Like the VFX and stuff in them are way better than some other stuff I've seen. I'm like, how do you get this creativity compressed into that short amount of time? Like, yeah, because short films, obviously, you can make the argument some short films are more creative than feature lengths because you've got to condense an entire story down into like 5, 10 minutes. But then with TikToks, you've got to condense a whole story down into 60 seconds. And yeah, it's one of those things like do you think that short form media is going to be a new approach to things, or is it just sort of a fad which will go away?
I don't think it's a fad that's just going to go away. But having said that, Vine came around and everyone went crazy for Vine, and then that died. But then obviously TikTok's come back, and it's like the spiritual successor to Vine. But I do think that like short form content does when you make like a traditional like sort of feature length film or something, you're more likely to follow the rules because that's just sort of you've been given the time and you sort of like, got act one, act two, do this or all that. But then when you've got time constraints, like you said, short films can be more creative than feature films. I definitely agree with that because, like, let's say you've got this character who has this want/need or both. Like in a feature film, you've got the entire like first act to establish that, whereas in like a short film that's like 5-10 minutes long, you've got probably like 60 seconds, and then if you're going to make something for TikTok, you've got like 5 seconds. So yeah, I do think it's definitely more. You do see more creative and experimental ways of doing things on short form things like TikTok. And I'll be honest, I don't really use TikTok that often because, like, most of. I mean, I ought to. I do. It's one of those things. I always intend to use TikTok more often, but whenever I go on it, I'm always just spam with like TikTok. The TikTok like memes and like the thoughts and stuff. That's all I spam with on TikTok. So I imagine if I go on there and actually follow some people that are relevant to what I like, then I'll enjoy it more. But generally, TikTok isn't a platform that I use. But I do see like short form content being. I don't want to say like the future because it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna overtake like. I don't think TikTok's gonna overtake YouTube. It's just not. But the advantage of TikTok is like the time commitment to watch someone's TikTok is so small that basically it's really hard not to get a lot of views on a decent TikTok because let's say you make a YouTube video that's 8 minutes long and it's full of content and useful information. Like someone's going to see that video and see, oh, that's 8 minutes. Do I want to click on an 8 minute video of this person I don't really know? Whereas TikTok, it just appears on your screen. And by the time you've made a decision about whether you care about it or not, it's probably already halfway through the video. So that's how you can get like so many impressions on a TikTok, and you can like get so many views on TikTok so quickly and really easily compared to like YouTube, for example, where you have to work really hard to get like 10,000 views on a video. Where on TikTok, if it's a bit funny, a bit relatable, you can get thousands of views like that because it's so short of a time to spend watching it, and it appears on your screen, and by the time you've decided to swipe off it, they've already probably watched half of it, so it counts as a view. So you can get loads and loads of views, and that's really attractive, I think, to like advertisers and people who are looking to do like sponsored content because you can reach a massive audience relatively easily compared to something like YouTube.
Very true. What is it? It's every 1,000 views you get on TikTok, you have to have passed a certain amount of followers to get I think it's like creator fund or something. But it's every 1,000 views gives you like 5 cents, which is about 3p or
Mm.
something like that. Um, but then if you take into account these people are getting like millions and millions and millions of views,
Oh yeah.
that all adds up very quickly. But the ones I really like are where it's because you got it on Vine as well, where it's a seamless loop.
Yeah.
And there's one guy in particular I follow, I can't remember his name, but he messes around a lot with VFX. So it's like there was one where he became all the different Avengers. Like he did something and he VFX'd um Iron Man's gauntlet onto his hand, like he gave himself facial hair and then he turned himself green and all that. And it goes with the song and the way he's edited the video and the song, it literally just flows consistently, like and
Yeah.
perfectly the whole time. And I just think those are so creative because it's the fact these people look at you look at something and you go, right, how can I make that like an infinite
Yeah.
loop? I think that's really creative. But I don't know if you were around on YouTube as much as I was back in the day. But there was a channel called 5 Second Films.
I have. It rings a bell, but I can't. Can't say that I've heard of it, but I
Pretty
think I
much
have.
it's literally it's what it says on the tin. Like you would get a narrative and a payoff within 5 seconds. And it's just, I remember watching these and being so astounded because some of them were so creative. There was one where they were on like a spaceship and they had to try and work out who an alien was or something like that. And it's I that will always be whenever I think of short form content, that will be the pinnacle of it for me because it's literally 5 seconds. You barely registers what's happened and the video's over. And yeah, I think that's so impressive. Like being able to have an entire narrative unfold in the time it takes you to, I don't know, like turn your screen so you're watching it horizontally. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's cool because it's one of those things I'd really like to try doing like a really short form like film one day, like 60 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. Because it's like, again, for the 100,000th time we've mentioned it on this podcast so far, but like our third year film, like
mm,
that, all the characters' wants and needs and situations and stuff, they could have been established in a matter of seconds, really. You know, in less than a minute, all those things that or I rather, spent like 10 minutes of the script on could have been established in like 1 or 2 minutes. But obviously, when you have that long runtime, you are prone to just add in more waffle into the story. And when
yeah,
you have such a short space of time to cram everything in, then it forces you to really sort of to refine your idea down to like its elemental pieces. Um, and like your character's wants and needs, they become primal. So they're so like so quick to grasp them, and it's so quick to, obviously it has to be quick because you're making a film in like less than a minute. So it really like forces you to sort of think about, okay, what are the core elements, what makes a story tick. Whereas when you have like a longer runtime, people, this is obviously like very influenced by what I've seen like at uni with student filmmakers, but like if people think, oh, they've got 10 minutes, oh, I'm going to spend 97 seconds on this one long shot that goes through here, and this shot's going to establish everything about the world and the characters and stuff. And that's like, that's 1.5 times the length of a TikTok, and people can tell an entire story within a TikTok. So I think
yeah,
short form content is interesting. I don't think it's the future. I don't think it's going to replace like, YouTube or anything like that. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see like where it goes next, because it's one of those things. It's like, back when TikTok first became a thing, it was just like, was it lip syncing to songs? That was like the first big trend on
yeah.
TikTok, and then it was like
That's
the
what
dances and
the
stuff.
first big one was.
And
Yeah,
back then it was just like, oh, TikTok's just a app that you go on to lip sync and do dances. And then it became like, oh, TikTok's just a place where only just of age girls go to, like, basically just sell themselves online, and then and then like now it's become like a sort of a legit platform where people can just share things as they would on Instagram or on Vine or something like that. So
Well, there's a girl I met at university, and she blew up on TikTok. She's had like Amazon and stuff, pay her to do adverts for them. So it is, yeah, it's suddenly changed from this thing where you get like 8-year-olds who like they barely know how to work a phone. Say that they probably know how to do it better than I do, but like they're barely out of like potty training and they're just doing dances in front of the camera. And now it's you have millions and millions and millions and millions of views on people talking about politics,
mm,
and it's so different, especially the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Like, I just remember there was a whole shift in dynamics on the app. Um, like a lot of things were changed. But going back to what you were saying about you don't have the time to do anything, sort of in a short film, you don't have the time, whereas in a feature film, you can spend 30 seconds establishing your
yeah,
setting. And it is the thing, if you took 30 seconds to establish where you were and, sort of like the GTA thing where you start out really big and then you gradually zoom in. So you
yeah,
start above the clouds and you zoom into where you are to really give that establishing thing. That's half of your allotted time
yeah,
gone. So it is the thing of you don't have the time to waffle. You don't have the time to show all these amazing cinematic shots. It's like you have what 2 seconds to establish where you are, and then it's got to be back to the
yeah.
story. You can't waste time. So otherwise, it's not going to work. Yeah,
Yeah, it just forces you just to focus on like the actual components rather than just like this grand vision in your head. Yeah,
yeah. So, it's interesting, and I want to see this app get to the point where it's as popular, or I guess it is as popular as like YouTube now. But YouTube's outlived things like Vine and I don't like, is Tumblr even a thing anymore?
I mean, in my
Like,
universe, it
it's
never was, but
outlived all this
I,
stuff.
I don't hear about Tumblr very often at all anymore.
It's like YouTube, I don't see it going away anytime
Oh God,
soon.
no.
But I worry TikTok is going to be just another Vine where it's like I've put out videos on there. Like, I just make random stuff about like Harry Potter and superheroes because I'm cool like that. But it's like if I was one of those people where they've essentially their whole career is TikTok. Like they gave up on another career because they wanted to pursue
Yeah,
TikTok. That uncertainty, because granted, the career path we've both chosen is fairly uncertain in terms of work. We're not guaranteed any work. But like with TikTok, your future is literally based on whether or not this app will be around in 10 years,
yeah,
which is
and
ridiculous.
honestly, I don't really see TikTok being around in 10 years. But then, I guess there's a lot of people who looked at YouTube and at the time they were like, "Well, that's going to go away soon," and it's still here. So,
True.
you know, but like I do worry because like it's sort of TikTok is like a trend at the moment, and
Yeah.
like YouTube has sort of become like a constant. Like like the thing, there's trends on YouTube. YouTube itself isn't a trend, whereas TikTok is
Mm.
still like in my mind, it's still sort of on that sort of balance between being a trend and being its own legit platform. Like because again, like TikTok, it's much easier to sort of cannibalize TikTok as well because like they've got reels now, and most of the TikToks that I've seen have been TikToks that have been re-uploaded to Instagram because Instagram is something that I
Mm.
actually use. So like YouTube does something that other platforms can't. Like obviously, what other like video uploading platforms can you think of? Like there's YouTube, Vimeo. Who uses Vimeo unless you're like a professional trying to like enter a film festival or something like that? Like you
Yeah.
don't, if you want to have your video seen by people, you don't upload it to Vimeo. It goes to YouTube. And if you want to make like a 10-minute tutorial on how to, I don't know, anything, bake a cake, you don't upload it to IGTV really. It goes to YouTube. So like YouTube does things
Yeah.
that other platforms can't, but TikTok doesn't necessarily do things that Instagram can't. Now Instagram's implemented the Reels feature, so it's more of a, like, when I think about the future of like something like TikTok, it's just, can that platform continue to be like, can it continue to develop and sort of level up itself to make it more attractive than just using Reels on Instagram, in my mind. But then again, I don't really use TikTok that much. Rarely, actually. I think I have the app on my phone purely for when people send me memes on like Facebook group chat or something. I've got to open
Yeah.
TikTok to watch it, something like that. But most of the TikToks that I've seen in my life have come from Instagram, being re-uploaded to Instagram. It's
No,
actually
fair
much the
enough.
same as Vine as well. Like most of the Vines that I ever saw, I watched them like uploaded in compilations on YouTube.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not an expert on social
But
media.
what is weird though is the fact, how long was Vine around? It was around for what, like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah,
It might have
I
been
seem
more
to
than
remember
that.
about three,
But
4 years. Yeah.
if I started saying two guys sitting in a hot tub, what, like, for me, the immediate thing that comes to mind is two guys sitting in a hot
All right.
tub, 10 feet apart, it's an
Yeah.
arcade. And it's the amount of vines where it's like, I haven't seen the video in years. I saw them maybe, what, twice or something? But they're so ingrained in my head because of how like used they were. They were just everywhere. And it's really weird the fact that something I haven't seen in about 5 years is still living in my head, and I still know exactly what it is, like what
Yeah.
it's referring to.
I mean,
Quite
that's the thing with
interesting.
like short form stuff like TikTok is like it's so quick, it's so easy to remember most for the most part. Like
Mm.
there's a big category of memes and stuff that came from Vine that are still somewhere in my brain that I just can't get them out. They're just going to be in there forever, I think. And that's the kind of thing that something like TikTok or Vine or Instagram Reels offers over something like YouTube. Like I can't really think of like YouTube videos that I can remember as clearly as I can like videos I saw on Vine or TikTok, something like that. But again, I'm not an
Yeah.
expert. I don't know what the future of social media is. I'd like to see TikTok develop. I think it's interesting. I do think it's a cool and creative way to do things, especially after like the whole, like, everyone on YouTube makes their videos 10 minutes long now because they get more ads. They can place more ads if it's 10
Yeah,
minutes
you
long.
get the ad revenue.
So it would be kind of refreshing to see people condense their content down to like a few minutes or even just like a 60-second TikTok. If that's something that I'm interested to see. But yeah, that's all I've really got to say on TikTok at this point without waffling more.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's one of those things we can't really predict how it's going to turn out. It'll be, yeah, we'll either see it in 5 years or we won't.
If I had the expertise to predict the future of social media and TikTok, I probably would be a much richer man than I am right now.
Yeah. Anyway, should we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
Move on
Next
to
topic.
the core of this. I don't have any other topics.
Next segment. We don't have transitions yet, so that's as good as it
So
gets.
they're just gonna
Yeah,
stay in. Right. Should we explain what we're doing today
yeah.
then?
I think you can have the honour of explaining this thing because it's your idea.
Oh, goody. Okay, so if you've seen the past couple of episodes, you'll have seen segments where we've talked about, or like we've randomized movie titles, and essentially then we have the rest of the episode to come up with a story, like a short sort of pitch of what the story is. And then at the end of the episode, we reveal it. What we're going to do this time is take that, work together, and not form a script as such, but just try and piece together something like a short film, like a short story, which could feasibly be
Yeah.
shot.
So this is essentially like a live on air focus group, maybe brainstorming
Yeah,
session.
like a script writing
Actually, I don't
brainstorm.
think you're allowed to say brainstorm anymore. I think it's been categorized as offensive. Yeah.
Really? Spider
Yeah.
chart, whatever it's called then.
We're gonna mind map.
Mind map, that's the one.
Right. So I understand this is gonna be. You've picked a genre already, haven't you?
Yeah, so I randomized a
Okay. So
genre.
are we
Uh,
going to
so,
select a random film title for it and do that, or are we just gonna come up with it purely based on the genre?
we'll do the random film
Okay.
title as well. We'll do the genre, the random film title, and then just see us struggle,
Okay. Let me
essentially.
fire up the film name generator 3000. Film title. I can't remember what I used. Okay, sorted. Right. So, what is the genre, first of all?
The genre is science
Science
fiction.
fiction. That's a good one. You can go a lot of
It's a
places
pretty
with science
broad one.
fiction.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was quite happy because either side of it, you had foreign movie and then independent. I was like, I don't want either of those, and then it landed on science fiction, thankfully.
Right. Let me just switch our screen so the viewers at home can see the title being generated. So obviously you at home can see this. George, you won't be able to see it, but just trust me. So you can see the 6 titles generated whenever you generate an idea or a title rather. We're gonna pick the first one, aka the top left. That's the first one. That's what we're gonna pick. So we're not sponsored by StoryShack.com, by the way, yet.
Give us money, please.
So I think you press this button. Okay, right. The first one on this list of film titles, which is the one we have to go with, is called Going Into the Fires.
Going into
Yeah,
the
if you like
fires.
that, I will offer you a one-off reshuffle if you want. I think that's a nice thing. But if you're happy with that, then I'm happy as well.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Going into the fires.
Into the Fires.
Uh, I don't know, because my concern is it's a weird one. My computer's bugging out a little bit. It's interesting. It's a weird one, but also I don't know because yeah, just reshuffle it.
You want to spend your
Reshuffle
reshuffle?
it.
Okay.
Spend for reshuffle.
Right. Reshuffling. We can only do this once, by the way. Okay, so the next one is Praised by the Abyss.
Okay.
So I'll let you choose which one we go with. I should say we can reshuffle once.
Uh,
So we've got Praised by the Abyss, or what was it called? Something about the fire. I can't remember.
we'll get praised by the
Praised
abyss.
by the
Sure.
Abyss. Okay. Oh boy.
It's my
And to do this, we're going to be using a platform called Celtex, which again is not a sponsor yet. If anyone from Celtex is watching, sponsor us, please. And the reason we're using this is because it's a good platform to write and format scripts very easily. I'm not going to do a deep dive on the features of Celtex because I'm not going to do that until they pay me to do it. But the reason we're using it mainly is because we can both edit this document at the same time. So obviously you're seeing this typing up,
abyss.
and that is George typing, not me, because the power of the internet.
Boom. How do you spell abyss? Is that it? Abyss. A deep measurable space. Yeah, there you go.
Praised by the Abyss, the
Cool.
motion picture. Right, so let's put your producer hat on right now. You're the executive at the prestigious film studio that's recruited us to
God.
write this film.
Oh,
How
Lordy.
long? And what's the target audience?
Right. Um, we'll do a
Feature.
feature. So between 90 and
Good
120
heavens.
minutes.
Okay.
Good heavens. Okay. Uh, we'll say age range between 16 and 24. your
Okay, so
average film goer. Um, what other categories do we need? Don't know.
is this 16 to 24 just general, or is it men, women, somewhere in between? Okay,
Also general.
so we have to write a feature length, well, come up with a feature length idea aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds. The category, the genre is science fiction, and the title is Into the
Sci-fi.
Abyss.
Was it not Praised
Oh,
by
was
the
it?
Abyss?
Uh, Hang on. Oh no, I closed it. I think it's Praised by the Abyss.
I was going to say, because that's a weird title for me to have come up with.
Yeah,
Into the Abyss works so much
I
better.
think that's why it came out.
Yeah, right.
Right. I'm going to take a
Oh
brief
boy.
intermission because I need to give Holly something. I had a button sewn
Yeah.
back on my shorts because I popped a button off because I'm fat now.
Oh,
Right, I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
yeah, go.
Right, I'm back in the game.
Okay.
Right, so Praised by the Abyss, 16 to 24, feature length idea. Is there anything that comes to your mind straight away?
Um, well, the fact that it's sci-fi means we can obviously do something like space
Yeah, yes,
type
sci-fi's
thing,
yeah,
which works
sci-fi's a
quite well
really
for
good
the
genre for
Abyss.
this title because you can do pretty much what you want with sci-fi. Like you could argue Harry Potter is a sci-fi film.
Um,
Well, I think Praised by the Abyss. I feel like whatever the story ends up being, I feel like a journey of a story would be a good fit. You know, a character going somewhere to accomplish something.
can we share Word documents? I'm just thinking.
I know on Google Docs you can start a Google Doc and you can see it like in real time, like you can on Celtics.
Okay, that might be an idea. Google Doc. Just because then it means we can plan it and stuff.
Yeah, actually, we can write down ideas rather than having to just talk to them all the time. Yeah, but I do feel like when I think of the title Praised by the Abyss and the genre and the age group particularly, I do think the first thing that jumps out to me is having a story where a character is on a physical journey as well as a emotional one, obviously.
Yeah.
Because well, one, it sort of works with the title, I could sort of you could allude to the story with the title if you did a travel in one. But also the spirit of the 16 to 24-year-old is very much in movement and travel and stuff like that. So I feel like a story where perhaps the protagonist is sort of 16 to 24 in that age group. I feel like a protagonist that age going on a physical journey is something that probably would resonate quite well with that age group because everyone loves to travel these days.
Yeah.
If you see Instagram, whew. Right, I'm going to switch back to the original overlay so people can't see my information when I log into Google.
Yeah, I've shared a document with you.
Oh, got an email. Open in Google Docs. Oh, look at that, lovely. Right. Viewers, you're allowed back into the circle now. So yeah, what are your thoughts? What's your first thought?
I'm thinking something. I've been chatting quite a lot with my mates about Dark
Okay.
Souls recently, and Abyss really makes me think of like Dark Souls. Um, so I'm kind of thinking like medieval stuff in space, something like that. So like oversized weapons, obviously. Don't know. I mean, like praise makes me feel like religious. So it's like say like a
Yeah.
cult or something who worships like a black hole or something like that. Um, uh,
Okay. Well, we'll spitball an idea here. So you got this world. It's like medieval setting. Um, something like what you just said. And obviously, you said Abyss makes
yeah,
you think of like religion or something like that. Perhaps it is a world that is governed by gods. You know, not exactly a new
yeah.
concept. And perhaps our protagonist is thrust into a conflict. Maybe it's between religious groups, maybe it's between kingdoms or something like that. And I mean, we could throw all sorts of tropes at this character. You know, they could be the chosen one, and they could be they could
That's
be
true.
descended from the gods, or they could be sent. They could be sent by the gods to bring balance to the force. Oh wait, that's already been kind of done. But that's something we could go with. Like, perhaps there's this chosen one protagonist who's been they exist solely for the purpose of bringing an end to this conflict, and they're doing it on the god's orders, but obviously they've just been sent down, and they sort of have to discover their purpose, or perhaps maybe they'll
So what kind of like they're born
yeah
into it without
like
knowing?
like a prophecy kind of thing. Maybe perhaps the gods, because a human lifetime for a god would be like less than a blink of an eye, so perhaps they saw something coming that only the gods could prevent through sending this person down, and obviously they chose this person maybe at birth. I don't know, or maybe they just did the Virgin Mary and just decided to make a woman pregnant, and her son or daughter is the is the chosen one on this line to end this conflict. Maybe.
You could also go down the route of like Excalibur or something, where there's like a weapon where only
Yeah,
they can wield it. But then you could throw in something like Thor, where it's like they aren't worthy at first. They've got to
yeah.
prove their worth. Your typical tropes,
Or
obviously.
or having said that, perhaps there's this world that's governed by the gods, and
Hmm.
there was one of the gods that was messing around a little bit, poking some areas and pulling some strings to entertain themselves, and they were found out, and they were shunned, and they were sent down into the mortal world to live amongst the people they were manipulating. and they have to prove their worthiness as a god once more to be restored back. Something like that, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. What? So it's like you get the redemption arc of like a
Yeah.
fallen god
So
kind
if
of thing.
picture, maybe this is a world that's governed by five gods, and one of them does something not unforgivable, but does something that like you could say that. I mean, I'm sort of spilling into, how I told you about I was writing about some stuff ages ago. I'm sort of spilling
Yeah.
into that world a little bit, so I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to use up the idea. But it could be a forsaken divine being that is sent down to live um, amongst the mortals, because that is like the ultimate dishonor for a godlike being. But perhaps when they go down, they lose all their memories and stuff. Obviously they were a god up there, and then their memories wiped, and they're sent down to live amongst the regular people, and bit by bit they rediscover what they were. Maybe, I don't know. We just got a spitball.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that idea actually, where it's like they forget, like they have their mind erased like that, or it's like that could be the sort of over the top twist at the end though. It's like you're presented with this character, they're just very mundane. You don't really get a lot of backstory about them, and like whenever anyone asks, they avoid the question, and then it's revealed at the end. It's like, whoa, you were one of them the whole
Well,
time.
perhaps you could again, you could say there's some huge conflict going on in this world. There's wars between empires, and people are dying. It's all over religion and stuff. And like, think of this as like an opening sequence. As like, it could be this character, man, woman, young, old, whatever, who just sort of wakes up in, like, let's say, like, there's a town that's been like a city that's under siege or something like that, and it's burning and everything. And like the opening
Hmm.
shot is they just wake up and everything's happening around them. They have no idea what's going on. So, and they're sort of thrust into this conflict, and they just sort of, at first they're trying to survive, but then they start to sort of piece what's going on, and then they start to take their own
You,
stand. But then it turns out that person, the reason they just woke up in the middle of it is because they've literally been sent by the gods to do their bidding.
yeah, you could also have a thing which you never know their name. That's the thing I've seen quite
Yeah,
a few times recently. Is like you never actually hear the character's name out loud. So they're referred to, but it's kind of like, have you
no,
ever seen Layer Cake? So Daniel Craig plays an unnamed protagonist, and even in the credits, his name in the credits is just
yeah,
XXXX. He doesn't have a name. I also watched Cherry, the new Russo brothers one with Tom Holland. I watched that literally last night. Again, you don't know his name; he's just referred
yeah.
to in the credits as Cherry. Um, so I feel like that could be something, and then it's sort of like you don't draw attention to it because that's one of those things you never really think about it until
Yeah.
after the fact. But it could be something you don't know their names, and the reason is because it's
I
like
don't
their
have one.
name is either oh, they don't have one, or it's like if anyone were to actually speak it, it's I don't know, like only a
Yeah.
god can say the name or something like that. Some bullshit like that. Yeah. I don't know. Right. So, man, wake up in the siege.
So you could. So we'll take this waking up in the siege idea and just run with it and see where we go in the name of progress.
Yeah.
So picture like a guy. He wakes up, city's under siege. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know where. He doesn't know who. Um, he doesn't even really know what to do. So
Yeah.
right away, you have this sort of you've got this guy who doesn't know what's going on, and you've got this impending doom that's around him. So his first challenge is to survive, and this sequence of him surviving whatever's going on under this city under siege, that could establish their
Yeah.
strengths and their weaknesses, You could, like, for
I
example, oops, I just whacked my table. For So, for
that's all.
example, like they wake up in this burning building, and obviously the first instinct is maybe look out a window or look out a door or something like that. Maybe they're attacked by
Mhm.
an invader, and he just fights them off like somewhat effortlessly. You establish, they're a good
Yeah.
fighter, and then perhaps they're sort of working their way through the city, and they're sort of neutral in it because they don't know why they're there. So he's then got a choice. Like, does he join in the attack or does he try and defend the people that are there? And straight away with that choice, you can establish the morality of the character.
Well, what you could, I've just had a very basic idea, but what if it's sort of the payoff at the end? Like throughout the film, he's presented with choices. So it's like you can go help this woman who's just sort of crying out for whatever reason, but it's whatever choice he makes. Like if he chooses to do the good thing, it doesn't benefit him in any way whatsoever. Like he could literally just walk past and it wouldn't affect him in any way. But like throughout the films, he's presented with all these sort of good or bad choices. He always chooses the good side. At the end of it, it could be revealed that it's like this is something the gods do every now and then. It's like they'll send one of their own down, and they have to prove without the back knowledge of that they are a god, they've got all these abilities. They have to prove to the other gods and to themselves they are sort of before they are
Yeah, well,
naturally
think maybe
a good
think of
being
this
or
like
something like that.
obviously one division, the new
Mm.
Vision, the White Vision. He is Vision, but without the memories. But then obviously he gets the memories back, but he doesn't have an emotional connection. So picture this is
Yeah.
like this person, this being is sent down. Everything about who they are, their moral compass and their decision making, all that kind of stuff, their emotional sort of temperament, that's all there. But all their memories of everything else is wiped. So they're sort of like a clean slate. So they're not influenced by
Mm.
like oh, I did this once, so I won't do it again. They're influenced purely by their instinctive reaction to whatever environment that they're in, and that could be like maybe it's a test of if they're worthy or not, like you said. And so they're sort
Yeah.
of stripped of memory, and they're sent down purely with like their personality or their moral compass, because gods have to be quite morally well adjusted, and it's sent down as like a trial. And you could establish that right from the get go again. Like, imagine wake up in a burning hut or something, walks out, he's got a choice. Like, maybe it's a city with different, um, it's like a walled city with different walls, like different stages of the city within it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we've got like the big
Mm.
outside gate, and then there's like different gates at different points in the city. So if it ever gets invaded, they can close off one section once they've lost one part of the city. Maybe he's like in the lower level of the city, and everyone's running, fleeing to the middle level, and they're going to close the gate. And maybe he's got a choice. He comes out his hut. If he goes left, he can run straight down the road and go through the gate and be safe. If he goes right towards the invaders, there's a family of people and a thing that needs saving. Stuff like that.
Mm.
So then right away, like inside the first like 90 seconds of the film, you you've established like a strength that they're a good fighter or something like that. But then you put them in this situation where they
Hmm.
literally have to choose, as binary as it can be, save themselves or try and save someone else, and that establishes what they are. Yeah.
So the
And
morality.
maybe
Yeah.
perhaps with this sequence, he goes to save, or he or she goes to save the people, and maybe it's too difficult. Maybe they fail to save them, and they have to flee, and that sets up an arc because their first experience from being like reborn. Don't forget they've got no memories or anything like that. So their first experience from being sort of alive, technically, is failing to save someone from imminent death. So that immediately sets up like a redemption. Like, is it a redemption arc? Because it's not like they've done something wrong, but it immediately sets up like a
Um.
motivating factor that you could recall throughout the film.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
And maybe that can sort of play into, they failed to save them because they weren't strong enough to do it. Maybe, physically or just mentally. Maybe the building was on fire and they run into it and they just don't have the mental, you know, uh, power just to run into it. So he or she turns and runs back. Or maybe it's like a physical challenge. They couldn't overcome the physical challenge. Maybe it's a building that's fallen down and they've got to get the way through wreckage to get to the people to save them, and they couldn't do it. Right away, that sets up. They weren't strong enough to do it then. So by the end of the film, they are strong enough to save people.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. Just for some reason, what's coming to head at the minute is like learned behavior, and it's like if, say, if a child sees their parent get upset at something, chances are the child will get
Yeah,
upset at it as well. So it could be something like, obviously, the audience don't know this at this point, but the man is a god. Like he can't get hurt, kind of thing. Or like if he can, it's not fatal or whatever. So it's like picking up something like on fire wouldn't affect him in the slightest. But he sees someone go to move something and it's really hot and it cut like you see the person's hands like severely burn. So he then
yeah,
doesn't even try because he's like, I've just seen someone else do that. And then it's sort of at some point when he starts piecing together, he thinks back to all these times where he didn't try because he was like, well, I've seen someone else do it. I'm not gonna bother. And it could show
yeah.
sort
That's,
of,
that's
yeah,
a cool. That's
sort
a
of
cool
like he
concept,
would
really,
have been able to
because
save people.
you think you've got this godlike character who is, for all intents and purposes, like immortal, can't really be harmed by things that would harm a regular mortal person. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, they go to save someone, and maybe there's some people already trying to save someone else. So he goes to try and help them, but then
Mm.
they catch fire or they get crushed by something like that. I don't know, or they get killed by the invaders, whatever. And obviously, seeing that, he's like, "See ya, I'm gone. I don't want to die." But obviously, without knowing
Yeah.
that those things can't affect him. And throughout the course of the film, it's sort of like a discovery of the power. It's like the whole like first act of the film. Because if we do like, let's say we did 90 pager, the first 30 pages, the first act, that could be establishing the character and what's happening in the world, and there could be some pivotal moment. Perhaps maybe he joins in. I keep saying they join in with some kind of fight or something,
Yeah.
and they have an experience where they probably should have died, but they don't. And then from the end of the first act to the midpoint, it's them trying to discover why, or maybe from the end of the first act to the end of the second act is them trying to discover why they are superior or seem to be more powerful. And then obviously at the end of the second act, they can sort of discover, unlock who they really are. And then the third act is them using their power to correct whatever's happening within this world, and that is the act that earns that person's um, earns the praise of the abyss. How about that?
There you go. So what should we say the abyss
The abyss could be
is?
the name of the realm where gods live. Like
Yeah,
gods live in space, and
praised. Yeah. Like they earn the
yeah,
praise of the gods. They are praised. Yeah, so it's like you could have literally someone at the end. It's like, oh my God, the gods have they are praising you. You've been praised by
yeah.
the abyss. Cut to black. Boom.
Dun dun dun.
Title
Yeah,
card. Roll credits.
like the collection of gods and where they all live in that physical space. It can, people around in the world that they're inhabiting, they could refer to that as the abyss. Perhaps the
Yeah.
abyss is deep below the earth. Perhaps it's up in the clouds. Who knows?
Excuse me. Yeah. No, that works. Okay. Right. Uh, Set up the character. First question: male or female, or are we just doing random
No, I
alien
think male or
thing?
female because you think they take the form of whoever lives down there when they like. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, this is the big question because male or female, like naturally in my head I
I'm
picture it's
happy
male
either way.
plus because I'm a male, so naturally I picture something
Yeah.
that I'm used to. But again, it depends. It depends if you want it to be like a statement because if you make it a female and then perhaps like the challenges the character overcomes are typically like, I mean, it's quite an interesting dynamic because perhaps obviously the power of being like a god and stuff is it could add another dynamic to it because the person is doubted by the people in the world that they're trying to sort of save or you know find their way in. They're doubted because they're female, and that could be another roadblock that the character has to sort of overcome.
Yeah.
Because if you think in
Well,
like a medieval
so we'll go.
world, like it's very male dominated medieval.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the men are the fighters and the
So
female
yes,
are
yeah.
the,
So
the
perhaps like
ones who put food on the
perhaps
table.
right at the
Yeah.
start of the film, you could have this statement moment where like this woman wakes up and this place is burning, blah blah blah, comes out and perhaps she sees the men soldiers all falling back to the next gate to the next level of the city, and there's a woman trying to
Yeah.
save someone
Very true.
in a building. So it's like
Yeah.
it immediately sets up the
You
contrast.
could. You could do,
But
yeah.
it's a thing you got to be careful about because you don't want to go too hard with the woman overcoming men thing because then it becomes like a
Yeah, because
statement thing that could alienate a lot of male people.
I was just thinking you could say it's like the person she's trying to have at the beginning as a child, and then they could say why did you do that? Like how could you have done that? It's like, oh, maternal
Yeah,
instinct or whatever. But then I'm like, I don't want to play into those. I don't want to play into the tropes of just woman
yeah,
because then it's you're taken away
yeah.
from what the story actually is.
So I feel like if we go with a woman protagonist, then we'd have to sort of walk a sort of tightrope. You don't really want to make every conflict this character overcomes be about men. Like you just
Yeah,
because then you risk alienating like 50% of the audience. And also, I don't think you know hot take alert, but I don't think that empowering women means depowering men. Like me and Holly were actually having this
yeah.
conversation because we watched Captain Marvel a few days ago,
Oh yeah,
um, and we just got sort of talking about the whole like um, men versus women and like the MCU was what we was talking about because like on the top of the Disney Plus page where it like shows the Marvel characters, it's like all men and then it's like Scarlett Johansson. So it's like she's like look at all those men, there's only one woman.
hmm.
And I was talking about how like a lot of films that are sort of meant to like empower women or like pro woman films, like particularly I'm talking like in sort of superhero stuff like that. A lot of them are quite poorly
Hmm.
done because they go too hard. Like Star Wars, good example. Like Ray
Yeah,
Skywalker, Palpatine, whatever. She's like OP from the start. Like she never has an issue doing anything. She's like perfect. But like everyone's like, oh, she's such a strong like female character. But in my mind, I don't think you build a strong female character just by eliminating challenges. Because if you look at all the male characters that are beloved, like you look at Thor for example, like the most masculine character in the MCU. Like in the towards like the back end of like phase two and phase three, he gets everything. He gets torn apart. Like Asgard gets destroyed, all his family are dead. He gets made a joke in end game. He's a big fat mess for most of it. Like you know that
yeah,
male character gets absolutely torn down to the foundations and has to overcome that, and that's something that if you're going to make a piece about a woman, they have to go through the same process in order to make it like equal. So if you make a story about a woman becoming powerful or whatever, you got to be very careful not to just make everything else around her sort of dumb and like easy to overcome, or just give her like way more ability than she should have at whatever it is that she's trying to overcome. So all that to say is that
Yeah.
if we go with a female character, we have to make the world as challenging to her as it would have been for a male character. And that doesn't mean saying, oh, she did this because like, you know, girl power. It's like they would overcome the challenges the same way that a man would, but it's a woman doing it.
Okay, right. What if we write it as if it's a man? Oh, whatever. Write it as if it's a man, and then see how the things play out. And if we can, at the end of it, if it's literally just a case of take the gender out and switch it, if we can do that, we would make it a woman.
No, I think if you're gonna write it for a woman, you have to do it from the start, because there is little bits and bobs
Okay.
that will be in there which you will definitely write differently if it's a woman character. Because it's all in the details. Like it's not just about like, you know, this woman enters this place and the king is king's a man obviously, and the king's a dickhead and the woman beats him up because girl power. Yeah, it's not just like that. It's also the way the character interacts with the world and the friendships they make and stuff like that. They're all influenced by gender. So I don't think you could write it for a man and then just switch it to a woman because it's like, you know, because it's easier to write it that way, so you're not worrying about the fact it's a woman, because it fundamentally changes the way that
Yeah.
character interacts with the world.
Okay. Good point.
So I don't really know where that leaves us. I've sort of lost track. So we've got sort of a core idea. We have a
Yeah.
god or goddess in this case sent down as part of like a trial, maybe if that's what it's called, like a trial, sent down to live amongst the mortals without any memories or knowledge of who they are or what powers they have. And basically the story, the arc of the character and the story is literally just them discovering, well, trying to find out where they are, what's going on, discovering the world. I think that's a good way to establish the world, because if the character doesn't know what's going on in the world, then by extension, the audience, if the character has to figure out what's going on in the world, by extension, the audience has to figure it out as well. So that's quite a good way to establish a world without having to just like cram in exposition, because the character is going to naturally explore it and be inquisitive about what's going on if they don't already know. So that sort of
Yeah.
avoids the exposition of like, you know, just establishing like this big world and then thrusting us into the story. And then, so first act, what's going on? Where am I? Second act, what am I going to do about it? How can I help? Third act, second act, what am I going to do about it? How can I help? And who am I? Probably the biggest one. And the third act is the realization of who they are and how they help and how they overcome what's going on in the world. That's a fairly simple arc to follow.
Yeah.
Because you've got the sort of the who, what, where, when, why collection, and at the end, yeah. So let's have a look. So at the start, you've got who am I, what's happening,
Yeah.
when and why aren't really that important. When is this happening? Why is it?
Yeah.
The why is important.
The why, the when doesn't matter. The
Yeah,
why is
the
revealed
why will
later
come
on.
in the third act. So yeah, I'm relatively happy with that sort of structure.
Yeah.
First act, she discovers the world, tries to trying to figure out who she is. Second act is in and amongst the world, amongst the people, and then at the end of the second act, break into third is when she figures out exactly who she is, and maybe perhaps she forms friendships in the first act, and in the second act Okay, got an idea. So let's say you have
Okay.
this map. I don't know what it looks like, but let's say there's a city that she wakes up in that is under siege, and
Yep.
obviously the good guys are losing because the city is burning and everyone's falling back. So wakes
Hmm.
up, just naturally joins sides with the defending side because that's what you do if you were like seeing people be attacked. You naturally you go to defend the people,
Sure.
and in that process, she fails to save the people at the start, ends up running back and becomes part of this group of people that are under attack. In doing so, she gets to learn a little bit about what's going on, but also she can develop some friendships and connections with people, and that could sort of be the first act. Second act, it's now a joint cause. So the first act is bringing her and the world together, and second act could
Yep.
then be her and the people that she's with in the world. There's now like a joint cause that they've got to overcome. Perhaps maybe they lose that first city and they have to fall back to like another. They sort of on like a refugee journey to get to this other like stronghold, perhaps.
Yeah.
And maybe at the midpoint, because the second act is when she's trying to figure out uh, how can I help, who am I. The first part of the from break into act two to the midpoint could be her solving the question of how can I help, and then from the midpoint to the break into act three could be her figuring out who she is. So maybe perhaps she separates from the group that she forms the friendships with to go and figure out who she is. Maybe there's like a temple in a mountain somewhere. I don't know. She's got to climb up and discover all these things. Or I don't know. Maybe some like religious people, like the like the what they call the greybeards in Skyrim. She has to climb up all the steps and fight a yeti and a dragon or something.
Oh God.
She has to leave the main group to ultimately discover who she is, and then you've got sort of
Yeah.
two storylines that you're invested in because you've got her figuring out who she is, but then you've also got what's going to happen with these people. Maybe perhaps when
Hmm.
she leaves, while she's figuring out who she is, the people that she's now become friends with and become a part of their community, maybe they're under attack again, and then the third act is this sort of race against time because perhaps she has to overcome some obstacles to reconnect, to reunite with this group of people, and eventually she has to save them, and that
Yeah.
would set up like the all is lost moment. Say they fall back to this other city and that's under attack as well. Oh no! And they're this close to being defeated, but then she comes down and she's like, "I'm a god, by the way," and just joins the fight.
Yeah. Fucks me. Right.
So I don't know if we need to go
Uh,
into finer details at the moment because we don't want to be recording this podcast for like 4 hours. Um, we are at
yeah.
just over an hour, but I think that is
Oh God.
a relatively decent premise of what's going to happen within a story. So I think what we should come up with before we sign off this episode is obviously we've got the title, uh, maybe a log line synopsis, and then
Yeah.
perhaps in the future we can come back and
Um.
add in the finer details.
Yeah. Um.
So I've never been particularly good at writing log lines on the spot, I will admit. But I feel like a synopsis, something like uh, something like deemed as deemed as the lesser god insert name here, is stripped of her powers. Oh no. Deemed as the lesser god or goddess. So and so, whatever her name is, Jackie, is cast down from the abyss to live amongst the mortal people, which they
Lord people during a great time of need.
yeah. During a good time of need, as a test, to determine whether or not she is worthy, something like that.
Deemed as the lesser of the gods, Jackie is cast down from the abyss to live amongst the mortal people during a great time of need, with her memories removed as a
Yeah,
test of
that
worth.
can work. Is that logline?
Cool. Yeah. Well, is a log line meant to be an elevator pitch, or is it meant to be sort of like
Well,
for aliens, like in Space No, I'm
no,
gonna eat your screen?
logline is like, well, it's a one-liner. So it's like, what happens in one line. The elevator pitch is like a separate thing.
Okay. I was gonna say because if the log line is like the catchphrase, then we've just given away the twist.
No, the logline is what you sort of if you're going to send like a script to like a studio or something, like maybe the logline would be like the subject. I don't know.
Okay. Right. So
And synopsis, perhaps. Again, it's probably the similar to the logline, really. Um, I think that's too direct. Waking up in a burning building. How can I type somewhere else on the screen without interrupting what you're typing?
you should just
I
be
can
able
only
to
type
type.
where you're. I can't.
It says your pink cursor's right at the top. Try typing
Oh,
something.
I can't type anything.
Hmm.
Am I allowed to type? Do you have to like enable it?
Apparently, you are anonymous cheater.
Oh wait, sign in as Elliot Maris to edit. Okay, hang on. There we go. I'm signed in now. Right, let me
Boom.
just go down a little bit to make a separate section. Right.
Okay.
Um, Again, I'm just spitballing with this. I feel it's going to be a very quiet section of the podcast. I'm sorry, everyone. Lots of thought. Wake up in the middle of a conflict, try to control, Jackie's forced to pick a side. Hmm.
We really need to come up with a better name
It's
than
just a
Jackie.
placeholder, isn't it? Do you not think Jackie is a godly name? It's a very quiet section of the podcast.
It really is.
About edit some music over it, like a like the do 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 do. Well, like the countdown
Like
music.
elevator music. I was thinking, did you want to did you want to name the character or did you want to follow the nameless thing and you only find out the name
Um,
afterwards?
and it could be one of those things. Obviously, like if she's going to have like normal conversations with people, she will and form friendships and stuff. She will have to have some kind of name. But it could be like like Finn in Star Wars, where he just sort of picks a name because he doesn't actually have one. Maybe, and then at the end of the film, she could
Yeah.
discover who she really is, something like that. Because the nameless idea is it's cool, but
Well, it could be one of those ones where she never chooses a name. It's like if someone says, "What's your name?" She goes, "Oh, I can't remember." Then someone says, oh, they
yeah,
give her like a nickname kind of thing.
yeah. Like
And that's what
I
she's
think
referred to.
for her to have normal conversations with people and do stuff that she'd need to do, she would have to have some kind of name, whether it's actual name or like a nickname, something like that. And perhaps the
Yeah.
her actual name is revealed at the end, maybe. And I've written like a little mini synopsis. I'm not too happy with it, but on the spot, that's what I can do.
Yeah. I'm trying to piece things together in my head, but it's also like, yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where we have to do it
Oh yeah,
in
we
multiple
can't do
parts
it
because
all.
otherwise it's going to
Can't do
get
it all in one
so.
episode. But to be honest, I can see it quite clearly. Like I can just picture this. Um, there's a war happening for I don't know what reason, but there's a war happening, and she literally thrust into the middle of it, and she can run one way or the other, and she runs the other. So she runs and
Yeah.
she becomes embedded with the people who are losing the war, who obviously will end up being the forces of good. And she,
Yeah.
as they are journeying across this land to find safety, she's going with them. And as they overcome various things, maybe they get attacked, maybe there's environmental things, who knows. But as things happen, she sort of starts to feel that she is more than just a regular person. And then at some point, she has to go off. Maybe this feeling builds up within her, and she just has to go and find answers to the questions that are in her head. And meanwhile, the group of people that she's with become their situation gets increasingly worse. And once she figures out who she is and that she does have the power to save people, or maybe perhaps there's
Yeah.
like a turning point moment in the second act where she sort of starts to think that she's powerless to save everyone, and she spends the first act learning with the people and trying to help them, trying to save them. Then something bad happens, break into the second act. She sort of lost the hope, and she sort of goes off on her own. She abandons the people, and then she discovers that she has the power to, maybe the big point. Perhaps she goes off on her own. She discovers that she has the power to help them, but it might be, spoiler, it won't be, but it might be too late for her to help them after she discovers her power.
Yeah.
Then she gets a bit more of an arc there, because obviously, like, they have the immediate response of her is to do the right thing, which is okay, but it's not particularly interesting for character development. But then if there's some kind of event which changes her worldview, perhaps no matter what she does, people around her keep dying as a result of this war. So she goes off on her own because she can't save them, and then she realizes she can save them. So she that gives her like an actual arc to fulfill. But I mean, finer
Yeah.
details
No, I'm
aside,
with you.
I can see the structure of the film quite clearly.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's hard to come up with names of
Okay.
gods, characters, wars, and reasons for stuff all on the spot. Yeah,
All within like an hour.
but no, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah.
pretty interesting premise. I think I'm relatively happy with that. I thought we'd come up with something much less complex, to be honest.
We've got a whole like world based around this. Okay. Right. Shall we? Shall
Yeah,
we
let's give
leave it
it to
there
the
then?
original
For
overlay.
now.
Yeah, thank you for watching this much quieter episode of the Mise-En-Sesh podcast. Um, yeah, if you've got any thoughts and ideas on the film idea we've been talking about, feel free to throw them in the comments down below. And perhaps if you're in a bit of a rut and you like writing, or you're trying to think of some short film ideas, maybe try this with some of your friends. You go on a random film title generator and roll with the first one, or the second one in our case, but roll with whatever name it gives you, pick a genre, and just see where you end up, because it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Really
Yeah.
getting the creative juices flowing. I haven't actually had to think about a script in a long time, so this is it's
Yeah, I
quite
mean,
refreshing.
it's interesting to do, even if like the chances of us making this feature film are slim to none. Um, but it's still interesting
Nah, we'll get this
to
budget.
go down these sort of avenues of thought, because even though, like, this is a big thing that I've fallen victim of, is like I stopped writing things like a year ago because I didn't. Well, at the time it was lockdown. Well, it still is lockdown, but at the time it was the first lockdown, so it was like, oh, it's not going to get made for months and months, you know. So I wouldn't write things, I wouldn't work on ideas, I wouldn't sort of just write for fun, because like I wouldn't do it because I didn't think that anything was ever going to come of it. But then in not doing that, I've not practiced writing, I've not got any better at it, I've not explored different ideas and anything like that. So, and that is like 90% of what is what writing is. It's the ideas you don't use, and only a small percentage of them actually come to fruition. So yeah, so I can't recommend this enough to anyone who's watching. If you are looking to write, then even if even if you're not going to make a feature film as your first film, I would recommend just getting a random title, random genre, and just seeing what you come up with. And maybe you come up with something golden and you can sell it for millions of pounds to Lucasfilm. Uh, but worst case scenario is you're going to exercise your writing muscles much more than if you were just sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not going to write anything because I'm not going to make anything. So just do it. Just do it. Shia LaBeouf, 20 whatever year that was. But yeah, should we wrap it up there, because we're approaching the 1 hour and 25 minute mark, and that's,
Yeah,
in
I
fairness,
feel like
that's
we
not the
should
longest
we should definitely wrap it
episode
up
we've done.
by a long shot. But anyway, thank you for watching this episode of the Mise-En-Sesh podcast. I have been George. He's been Elliot. Hopefully, we can get another part of this out relatively soon. Yeah. Until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, viewers.